Welcome to The Switch, not another podcast. The Switch is a collaboration between Baseload Capital and DNB, aiming to accelerate the green transition. We want our podcast to be a central hub for knowledge exchange within the fields of renewables and green transition. Hosted by Kristina Hagström-Ilievska and produced by Emil and Jacob.
This guy who we're meeting today is actually the coolest kid on the block right now, at least when it comes to geothermal. Everybody wants to know about their new invention that will be the solution to all the problems of risk mitigation and actually scaling the geothermal world. He has been talking to Richard Branson. He was actually tanked by him. Let's see what they asked, what questions he got asked when he did that. Also, I'm so curious to know about why he actually thinks that it will succeed this time around. And what does a lawyer do in geothermal? Let's find out. Check him out.
Today we will meet the CEO of GreenFire Energy, a company that develops and implements innovative geothermal technology in a mission to accelerate the transition to clean, renewable energy. Our guest spent 33 years working as an attorney, but now he is the superstar of geothermal. Today we will find out how this switch happened for our guest and what GreenLoop technology is, and why he's more optimistic than ever about green energy. Let's give a warm switch welcome to our guest, Joseph Scherer.
Joe, welcome to The Switch.
Thank you.
Podcast.
This is going to be great. Thank you, Kristina.
We are in the Ion, a studio in Houston. And we met at the
CERAweek conference, yes, thank you.
And you were here on a mission, and I caught you because I really want to know more about how do you become a president of a geothermal innovative technology company when you're actually a lawyer? Tell me.
How did that happen? More naturally than you might expect. I was a project financing attorney for Cooley.
Cooley
is the name of the law firm in San Francisco, Silicon Valley, and we had an enormous technology company, client base, mostly venture capital funded, and so we worked with a lot of small companies. And one of my clients was International Power Technology as a young attorney, and they were doing alternative energy. It used to be called alternative energy financing.
Oh, okay. How long ago was this?
This is in the 1980s.
Alternative energy.
Alternative energy is what it was called, right. And so I was doing project financing transactions for them, and they asked me at one point to recommend someone to join them full time doing what I did. And I said, well, what about me?
Lovely.
And they said, well, that's good. So I arranged a leave of absence from my law firm. They were very flexible because part of the culture is working closely with emerging company technologies. So
the culture on your law firm actually encouraged you to do an entrepreneurial trip outside.
Exactly, yes. And I was able to be a developer and project financing guy for them. And when I came back to the law firm, I was there for 33 years total, but I kept doing project finance type transactions. And I did wind and solar and even did a wild algae to energy deal. And then I also got involved in carbon credit trading and worked principally with forest carbon credits and whatnot.
Money in green tech, that's your business?
Yes, yeah. That's right. So that's how I got there.
Tell me more about GreenFire Energy and why, and about the technology. Why does it actually stand out? What is special about it?
Right. Well, We've developed a closed-loop geothermal
And for people who
technology.
don't understand what a
Closed
closed
loop
is,
is you have basically pipe going into the ground, and either in a coaxial way you circulate the fluid in the pipe, or in a U-loop fan shape, or there are various different configurations. But the concept is you're circulating a fluid into the resource to pick up the heat, rather than simply, as done with conventional geothermal, find a geothermal resource and produce the brine and the steam and water, hot water to the surface. So you're actually circulating in a closed loop. So the key advantage of that is you don't need to rely on the producibility of the resource in its own right. You can pull the heat out with this closed loop fluid. And
that heat is something that we can use then in housing and where more?
It can bring heat to the surface for any purpose. Typically, we look at it in connection with power production, but it can be thermal, direct use heating as well. In fact, if you use it for direct use, you don't need to deal with the efficiency transition to electrical
And
energy.
I guess that's why you're so popular right now, because heat is the next big thing when it comes to geothermal?
Heat is a big thing, and we have a project now that is focused on heat, which is, in the past, we've really been focused on power. And we typically work with established geothermal owners because they have great resources, and obviously, but a lot of times their wells are idle for a particular reason, or they don't produce well, or the resource is degraded or something like that. But with a closed loop system, you can go into that resource, pull the heat out, and not degrade the resource, because if what you're doing is just with conventional geothermal, allowing a production, then for areas that are water constrained, which is a lot of the geothermal world, or pressure constrained, the more you produce it, the more you're depleting the resource. But with a closed loop system, you can just pull the heat out and not extract the mass. And in fact, one of the projects we're talking about, we just started, we got a grant from the California Energy Commission on this to do a project that we call steam-dominated GreenLoop at the geysers, which people in the geothermal world all know is the largest geothermal location in the world. And it happens to be north of us in the San Francisco Bay Area, just a few miles, so that's convenient.
So if this succeeds, if it's not an if, when it succeeds, I guess.
You.
This will be a way to deploy heat in a completely renewable way.
Yes.
And is there any consequences for the environment or anything like that?
The resources? Only good ones. This is good because one thing about the geysers, much of it is in a steam-dominated area. And so if you just bring the steam to the surface, you can flash it you can power turbines, and it makes sense. But if you only produce in that fashion, then you're removing the steam and the water and reducing the water pressure from the resource. So what they've been doing for a number of years is having to have re-injection wells to re-inject fluid back into the resource. But with our system, you don't need to do that because we call it steam-dominated GreenLoop. You put coaxial vacuum-insulated tubing into the well. The steam condenses on the vacuum-insulated tubing, the downbore heat exchanger. And when it condenses, you pick up the latent heat of vaporization, which is a lot of heat when you phase change from vapor to liquid, right? And the liquid goes back into the bottom of the well, and we design it so that the hydrostatic pressure of that column of condensed water is enough to push the water back into the resource. So it's actually two closed loop, an open loop and a closed loop. The closed loop is our fluid going and pulling the heat to the surface, right? The open loop is the steam condensing, going back into the resource. So it has long-term sustainability advantages because you're not removing water. And you probably know, water is a big thing in California. Right?
Oh yeah, we know, definitely. Is it deployable anywhere in the world?
If you have a truly hot, dry rock resource, which we also look at, in fact, we just completed a test project in Japan that is purely hot, dry rock. It also works, not the steam in two-phase, but the idea of the closed loop, because what you're going in to do is pull that heat out of the resource. But there you need to rely on conduction not convection from the resource. So you might go hotter and deeper, for example. I'm sure you're aware that hotter and deeper is a big goal in the geothermal world.
Definitely. but as well as that is a big goal, I think that another goal is really to utilize the heat beneath our feet in as many ways as we can, because it's a source that we're not using enough.
Correct.
What are your estimations that when people start using your service and product more, what is your anticipation about GreenFire Energy? Where will it take you?
In terms of the long-term approach for us? Well, we're obviously scaling up right now. We've just completed a financing with Baker Hughes, Helmerich & Payne, and a bunch of other. I got another.
And for people listening, don't knowing what Baker Hughes is, they're
a very large and capable oil and gas services company, and Helmerich & Payne is a drilling outfit. So we're getting properly funded. We're building. We're getting calls and from a lot of existing geothermal owners around the world. Many of them are in the ring of fire, but many are not as well. So it's an opportunity that's really worldwide. We like the idea of geothermal anywhere, but working with existing geothermal companies, there are a lot of them out there. There are 80 or so that would be significant geothermal companies out there. We're already working with the top 10, or 8 of the top 10. And in fact, I got a letter of intent to invest in GreenFire from one of them in Southeast Asia just this morning.
There you
So
go.
they're not just interested in being customers. They believe in our technology sufficiently to actually invest in the equity.
Well, that's a bit of one of the reasons why we have you here today, because you're a little bit of a superstar on the geothermal market right now. People are talking about you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's good. It's fun to be popular.
I can imagine that. Do you have good hopes for the future?
Yes, absolutely. We're getting properly staffed up. We have a number of projects going. For example, the Calpine project at the geysers, for example, if it's a proof of concept project. But all of our projects pretty much start with the retrofit of an existing well in an existing resource to prove out that our technology works in that particular resource. And then we tailor and design for that resource using different working fluids, for example, and it's a high modeling world with the view in each case to ramp it up to full scale, to like not just a megawatt, as we're talking hundreds of megawatts.
So you're basically out there saving a lot of faces now, making sure that those wells are utilized.
It's interesting. Starting with retrofits really gets things going quickly because that's an operations and maintenance type decision. But if it works, and it does, then it can scale to very large projects, and that's what customers are really interested in. Of course, we're really interested in as well. And the oil and gas world that's interested in GreenFire, they want to do hundreds of wells. They don't want to do just one well.
I'm saying that to the listeners now. They need to make sure that they have you that they survey you, check you out, see where you are.
They need to understand that. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Listen, let's go a bit personal. I'm a little bit curious now. Closing the part about the GreenFire, in a sense, we're going to continue this very interesting discussion, but I want to know more about you.
Now it's time for conscious questions.
What have they done for the climate? Have you seen something bad done to the climate, or do you have any guilty pleasures? Well, tell me, Joe, what question would you like to answer?
What have we done what have I done this week for the climate? I'm here at CERAweek in Houston.
Tell the audience what CERAweek is.
CERAweek is the largest oil and gas conference in the world. And it's been around for a number of years, maybe not so much since COVID, but this is a year that everyone's back and here in Houston on it. And it's really fascinating to go to some of the programs. And of course, we're meeting with a number of the biggest oil and gas companies for technical reasons and investment reasons as well. But we're also hearing that they are very dedicated to the switch, as you call it, and climate change. And one of the things I'm hearing a lot about at this conference, and they are dedicating themselves publicly to doing, which I don't think happened so much in the past, is being the solution for climate change. And I think they are ideally suited to be the solution. So there's a lot of discussion about carbon capture, utilization and storage, CCUS, and the various big oil and gas companies deciding to lead that effort. And they are the ones that should lead the effort because they have the technical ability, the financial capability to do it. So I'm more optimistic than ever about the switch because the oil and gas companies are going to make it happen.
It's kind of interesting what you're saying here. I mean, you're answering the question that your thing that you did for the plant this week was to go at CERAweek. It's connected to oil and gas industry, and many people
would say the
are
opposite.
listening to you now, and they're thinking like, "Hey, oil and gas, they are the villains in this." What is your comment on that? What do you think?
Well, years ago, people would say, "You sure that their interest in GreenFire isn't just greenwashing?" But it's not. That's not true. Now it is true. Several years ago, the price of oil and gas would go up, and the oil and gas folks would. Not focus on geothermal, right? But now they're very dedicated to geothermal and these carbon capture, utilization, storage technologies. And guess what? They're going to make money now that there's a market with carbon capture and storage. They're going to make money on that. That's a good thing.
That's a good thing. It's pretty amazing, actually, because you're walking around in this huge conference center, and I don't even see oil and gas. I only see.
They're not talking about it.
They're not talking about it. It's really interesting, actually.
Yes.
You would think that it's different, but every speech, everything that we've listened to is all about the transition.
Right. And they're investing not just in companies like GreenFire, but they're investing in the technology in major ways, or the carbon capture stuff, for example. And they have the ability and the technology to make that happen in a way that, new companies getting into the area, I would think, would not be very competitive. But the oil and gas world will rule that. And
do you think that they are honest? Do you think that it's an honest intention?
I think it's a pivot, yeah. And you may recall the Pivot 2021 conference back in July.
Which is a geothermal conference that
Geothermal conference, and the idea is let's help pivot the oil and gas industry into geothermal. And it was we enjoyed it a lot. We were recruited to be in the New Ventures competition, and I was able to be Shark Tanked by Sir Richard Branson. He came back.
How was that?
He came back from space just to Shark Tank us, right? And
he came back from space. Okay,
it was the week before he was in space at the conference, and happily GreenFire won that little competition.
What was the toughest question he asked you?
Oh, I don't remember. I think it was about patentability. I was talking about our patents, and he said, "Well, that shouldn't be your motivation." And I said, "Yeah, but you still need patents."
The entrepreneur and the lawyer met there.
There we are. Yeah, you got to finance these things. Yeah, which he understood and he agreed. Yeah. So that was a lot of fun. But the concept of the Pivot Conference is to pivot. Enable the pivot to oil and gas. And what we're finding is lots of people from the oil and gas industry individually, people around the country, world, want to be part of the solution, the climate change solution. So they're calling up and they want to work with GreenFire or look for new opportunities in that regard. So I think there's a cultural change that's going on generally, and in the oil and gas industry, where people in the oil and gas industry, they want to be more green. Then the companies want to be more green. The companies want their employees to be more green,
or do they have to be more green because there is no turning back? What do you think?
I'm not sure. It's both. I think it's both. I think it's a survive and thrive type blend.
Can you tell us more about what you just said? I like
survive
that
and thrive.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it rhymes, but the
obviously.
But I think there has been the view that oil and gas is this horrible thing, and by the way, they're fracking, and that's a bad word in the world. But if you can apply all that technology and experience to being part of the solution, then you thrive, not just survive. Make sense? Mm-hmm.
A good point. Thank you for answering those questions in a very genuine way. I think that these are conversations that are uncomfortable to have, but still needed to be had.
They need to be had. Right.
The audience is having those questions, and we want to answer them.
I'm not afraid of greenwashing anymore.
That's good. That's good. But so you mentioned a little bit like geothermal as a way of greenwashing the oil and industry. But I guess that it's more to it. Like, why is geothermal so potentially important in addressing the green transition?
Well, geothermal is an incredibly underutilized resource. I think it's 0.1% of the Earth's heat energy could handle or supply the human needs for energy for 2
Say
million.
That again?
0.1% of the Earth under our feet could supply human needs for 2 million years. So this is an incredible resource. It's all under our feet. Now, getting to it and harvesting it, that's a challenge, and that's what we're working on, and that's what the oil and gas world is pivoting to, and that, I think, is very encouraging. Right. So it's a fabulous resource, geothermal is, and it's essentially infinite. And as you were saying earlier, you can use it for direct thermal heating, or you can use it for electrical power production, either way.
So if it's this amazing resource, what is it that is limiting us?
Well, one of the things is that there was a study done a while ago that claims that 70% of the world's geothermal resources have not yet been discovered or characterized at all. So there's a exploration element to all of this. So we know the heat's there, but where is the heat, and how do you get to it, and the hotter, deeper, and all that. So the opportunity is with extracting that heat. Now that's going to take a few things, including the investment we're seeing now by oil and gas companies and whatnot to do. So does that answer your question?
So more investing, what more do you think it's going to take?
Well, it's technology.
Investing gives us technology, I guess?
Yes, it enhances the technology. And then there's also investment, back to my world, in the project finance world. You've got to finance these particular projects. And these are going to be big projects. And there are going to be hundreds of millions of dollars spent in these particular projects. But again, that's attractive to the oil and gas industry because most of it relates to drilling and managing that resource. So there will be projects, but these are going to be financed. But right now, we're getting called by a number of different project financing outfits. They want to do project financing because they know there's going to be a market out there. And if we have projects for them, they want to finance.
That's good. Is that a change, or is it?
Well, they need to have the technology proven out to them as well, because if you need to meet the credit standards of the project financing sources, of course, which goes back to my project financing background.
So would you say that what you just mentioned is the solutions to the problem?
Yeah.
Or are there more?
Yeah, there are a number of solutions to the problem. From our perspective in geothermal, it's a matter of access, but also economics. So the access to the resources, we believe our technology and certain others are enabling, right? So you're accessing the resource, bringing it up on a technology basis. And then the financing aspect is, we just discussed it, but you have to have the financing of the technology side and the project side together to really move the industry forward. So once you have access and once you have the financing, I think you have the problem solved, at least with respect to the geothermal element. And those have been issues in the past because geothermal has been considered a risky business. In fact, and one of the advantages in a closed loop approach, and we have a customer in Canada that's taking this approach now, is go ahead and drill for a conventional geothermal resource. Nothing better than conventional geothermal if you find it, right? But only but only a fraction of the wells that are drilled for conventional geothermal actually come out the way they're expected. They're hoping it will come out. So one of the things with our technology, we're saying drill them with the right diameters so that we can insert our closed loop approach into the wells. So if you find a fabulous geothermal well, go ahead and run it. And if at the point in time, maybe it's more a matter of when, that well might degrade due to changes in the resource or whatever, then you can install the closed loop approach. Or if in the first place you drill that well and you didn't find anything that would produce conventionally, then you can always have it might not be a fabulous well, but it'll always be a good well because you can use our closed loop approach. So it's actually, closed loop is a de-risking element for the geothermal world. So it takes a lot of the technical risk out of the geothermal world that has existed for a long time and has given geothermal a risky reputation.
I have to call you out.
Go ahead.
We're talking about this, but we're talking about that it is de-risking. We are talking about the different solutions for the geothermal industry, but it is still such a small part of the pie.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Should we even be talking about geothermal? Is that actually an option? Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Well, the geothermal industry has been around for a long time, and it's now getting the sort of attention that is appropriate. Another thing on the economic side we were talking about is renewable resources, and if there's one thing I would like everyone to remember is that renewable resources don't have to be intermittent. So wind and solar are intermittent resources, and that has
It means that
power
they're
outage.
dependent
Yeah,
on the sun and on the wind.
Yeah, and a good example is in California. The California Public Utilities Commission just a few months ago came out with a new guideline, which is a requirement actually, that says that they want another a gigawatt of renewable energy with an over 80% capacity rating. Well, wind and solar are under 50%, significantly under 50%. The wind doesn't always blow, and the sun always doesn't always shine. There's nighttime, for example.
So what's left? It's nuclear and it's geothermal.
It's geothermal. It's renewable, but it has to be renewable long term. So basically, it says there should be another gigawatt in California, according to the California Public Utilities Commission, for geothermal. And we've worked with the two largest geothermal outfits in California. One is our demonstration project at Coso, California, near the Mojave Desert. It's actually on U.S. Navy land, which was very helpful in doing our project. And this is the project that proved that closed loop geothermal, it was the world's first closed loop geothermal project in action, and we took a well that couldn't be used because
the U.S. Army actually is looking into geothermal.
The military generally is, yes, for alternatives because they have directives to be green as well. But they're the landowners at the Coso location, and then at the geysers, which is run mostly by Calpine, they're the largest geothermal location in the world. So when you get the government the California Public Utilities Commission saying we need high capacity geothermal energy, that takes us out of the intermittent world. And what's sitting there for is geothermal. It's basically saying we need a gigawatt in California, more of geothermal, because it's not an intermittent resource. You don't have to have batteries. You don't have to have energy storage because it's always on all the time, and you can count on it. And we're not going to have energy outages if we have geothermal baseload.
So what we're waiting on now is
baseload's the key word there.
Yeah.
Baseload. Yeah.
Baseload 24/7.
There you go.
Yeah. There you go. So what we're waiting for now is basically, there are so many things out there happening. What we need is more like the acknowledgement from the public.
Yes, and I think a public awareness of capacity. Which they're getting because when there are power outages, and it gets blamed, rightly or wrongly, on intermittent resources, sometimes rightly, sometimes maybe not fair. But those power outages get a lot of public attention, Texas, California, elsewhere in the world. And when the public realizes the best resource in the world under our feet, the heat beneath our feet, and it's always on, it's always available. Why not go with a renewable resource that has over a 90% capacity factor? So that I think from a public awareness point of view is really important. And now that is that needs to be priced into the price of energy too, which is now, it's just starting to happen. But we need an even playing field with what I used to call the wind and solar industrial complex, which is this alliance somehow between government and the wind and solar world, and they've had enormous success and grown dramatically, but they're always going to be intermittent resources. And when you take into account the cost of storage and batteries and everything that's got to be done related to that, geothermal is less costly. So when you get the economic advantages of geothermal associated with new technologies that can broaden the availability of geothermal, that's a winner.
So you are optimistic?
We're optimistic, absolutely.
Good. That's good. I'm curious a little bit about the question about what leadership do you find necessary in order for this to...
Well, yeah, part of it, there needs to be a government element to this, because the regulatory agencies essentially define the price of power, right, for consumers. So, for example, what's happening in California, where they're specifying that we need baseload renewable energy, happens to be geothermal, that's important. But also, I personally think having the economic incentives out there in terms of a carbon tax would be appropriate too. Because then you can use the wonders and the incredible power of the free market to use economics to push the energy transition, to push the switch.
Now it's time for the disruptive questions.
Does capitalism work for or against the energy transition?
I think it works for. Of course, I've been in the capitalist world, working in venture-backed companies and technology companies for a long time. But as long as the regulatory framework is fair and doesn't just prefer wind and solar, which it has in the past, but it's an even playing field, I think it's very, very useful. And because then the economics that are associated with a free market economy play, where you can't possibly regulate this to maximum efficiency like the free market economy can bring it to fruition. A free market economy has been phenomenally helpful, call it capitalism or whatever, in whatever area where the incentives are there. And these can be regulatory incentives, such as my example with the California Energy Commission, or it can be economic incentives. And so a lot of that we're seeing at CERA, for example. If carbon capture and storage is economic, who's going to do that best? Oil and gas industry. Why? Because they're going to make money at it, right?
So money can actually make sure that we have some good causes here.
I think we need the incentives, which is back to why I personally like the idea of a carbon tax, because that brings the cost, the true cost of carbonization into the equation for everyone that's involved in the energy industry to benefit and work around and hopefully make money at.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're coming to a close, a summary, and we always ask our guests if there is someone, because throughout our work career, we always met some interesting people. And I asked you this question when we were preparing a little bit for this conversation, and you told me such an amazing story. I just...
I'll tell you again.
Please.
Sunshine.
And maybe Sir Richie Ancoy is one of my friends, and he's the geothermal energy innovation director at Energy Development Corporation in the Philippines. And guess what? We've been doing a project with them. But I've known Sir Richie for a number of years. When he came to California as the innovation director, EDC claims to be, and I think this is right, the largest vertically integrated geothermal operation in the world. And the Philippines, as you probably know, is a fabulous geothermal location. But guess what? They've been using a lot of coal and other resources over the years. And he was trained as a geology and engineering drilling guy, and he was given the opportunity to go to Saudi Arabia and work in the Middle East and make a lot of money. But he realized that the Philippines has one of the greatest geothermal locations in the world, and he wanted to apply his knowledge and life to making geothermal economic and profitable in his own country. So he could support his country and the geothermal industry and be involved in technology innovation all at the same time. So he's been an inspiration to me because he came at it with a number of different goals, and one was doing the best thing for his country.
Well, thank you, Sir Richie, for inspiring us.
Yes.
And hopefully
Thanks,
inspiring a new generation moving into geothermal as well.
Exactly. Yep.
Great.
He's a great guy.
Thank you very much, Joe, for coming and telling the world more about geothermal and how we can use geothermal to do the switch.
Well, thanks,
I
Kristina.
look forward following the success of GreenFire
Oh,
Energy.
thank you very much. Much appreciate the opportunity and what you and Baseload are doing in connection with making the switch happen.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.
Take care.
As a summary, isn't it amazing that we beneath our feet actually have a power source that could supply us with energy for more than 2 million years ahead? It's amazing. But it's even more amazing that 70% of the resources that could do this are still not discovered. We need more innovations like GreenFire Energy to make sure that we utilize what we actually have, the resources that we have around us, so that you and I can make a better choice every time we switch on anything in our home. Anytime that we make sure that we use energy, we should be able to have a good option to do this. So thank you, GreenFire Energy and Joe and the team, for making sure that we are continuing to innovate, and I wish you all the best of luck and hope and look forward to seeing the success you have. Moving forward, I hope that this was a good episode for you, where you learned a lot about what options we do have. If you believe that there are others out there that also should know about what we should do to make sure to do the switch, make sure you subscribe and share this episode to that person. Until you do that, I hope that you will listen, enjoy, and make sure to check out our old episodes as well, because there are a bunch of them now. Until we talk and see each other again, I hope you take care of yourself, and if you can, someone else. Bye.